to the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design, faith and love, we intertwine. Route 77, where your journey's prime.
Hello, and welcome to the Route 77 podcast. You might think you're hearing Natasha right now, but surprise, this is actually an AI-generated voice made to sound like her. That's right. Today, we're talking about AI companionship and the risks of turning to artificial intelligence for relationship fulfillment. So, what better way to introduce the episode than by demonstrating just how realistic AI can sound? But as you'll hear in today's conversation, no matter how convincing AI gets, it will always be just an imitation of the real thing. Let's dive in as Natasha and Monique break it all down.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique. Hello. And no David today, but we're actually back after a week off just because I literally had no voice last weekend. I lost.
It would have just been me talking to you. I'm just going, yeah, that's it.
Like everything's a secret.
And then you probably just wouldn't want to listen just to me just telling you, what you shouldn't and shouldn't do. And just make sure that you pay attention. And yeah, it would have not been fun.
I'd just be making emojis over here.
That probably would have been fun. No, you were pretty sick. And to be honest, with everything that I went through in February, I was exhausted. So I think we needed a break.
So we missed a week. So sorry about that. If you're a listener and you were
our
wondering what
apologies.
happened, it's just literally this influenza A I had, and it takes your voice away. And as you can hear, it's slowly coming back, but it's not perfect yet. But it's much, much better. I can actually speak in a tone, not just a whisper.
And make sure that when you cough, don't cough into the microphone.
Yeah, I'm trying to get good on the mute button on the back when I need to cough because I still have it in my chest.
Cough
I
into
try
your
to duck out, but I make sure I press the mute button.
Yes,
As I am.
that's why the influenza A virus is so bad right now that the doctors are even saying that it's worse than when COVID was around. That was nothing compared to what's happening now. One doctor basically told a friend of ours that they're dropping like flies, and that he had a baby come in with pneumonia, the worst case of pneumonia he had seen. And that's in a baby, and that's very sad. So, yeah, it's not one of those kind of viruses that you want to play around with. And that's what Amber had. She had the influenza A, plus she had pneumonia in both lungs, plus she had urosepsis because she had to be on catheter, and that just created a whole nother bunch of problems for her. So, thankfully, she is now home. She is much better, and she is even starting to come off of some of the other medications that she only had to have a pupper in the morning and before she goes to bed kind of thing. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So
we're back.
You're on the puffer, but you're on the puffer 4 times a day.
Yeah, I'm a puffer, so I took it before I did this, so hopefully it keeps
Are
me
you a
from coughing
puffer
too much.
fish? I feel like a puffer fish when I have pea soup.
Yeah.
And I love pea soup. It just doesn't like me. Yeah.
That's the hard part when they don't like you. And the food that you like doesn't like you. I'm the same with sausages. But yeah. As you can see, what I'm wearing, Apologetics Canada t-shirt, sweatshirt.
I'm wearing Mercy.
We went to the conference this weekend and it was really good. It was about theology of technology, and there were so many. We wanted to be like split ourselves into many pieces so that we could see all the breakout sessions, but we had to choose. The first one we saw was separate, but the second one was the one we ended up watching together, listening through together, which was that AC podcast live. And it was really interesting. It really gets you thinking. And I said, I know that we have spoken on AI a couple of times already, but I think it's an ever-growing, ever-changing reality that is still with us right now. So it's not something we can just one and done or even two and done. It's going to be constantly a thing, and it will be constantly, it's morphing, and it's going to be relevant. It's going to be relevant, and it's going to become differently as things get more and more advanced. So I think,
and funny thing that I noted is that one of the things that people were really asking a lot of questions about is if they can become sentient.
yes, that if the AI can become sentient, that was like a common thread. That it's like what people have been asking in sci-fi for generations. Really, like you go back, the sci-fi always comes up with androids and robots and whether or not they're human. I think every single Star Trek almost, I think, has
Every
had that
movie.
episode.
They even mentioned a robot.
Yeah. But I think every single Star Trek series, maybe not the original, I'm not sure, but like they've all had a sort of like non-human person or being within their, and there's always the question, like there was Data, there was the holographic doctor, all these ones. So there's always the question came up in an episode was like whether they had, I don't want to say human rights, but the rights of a living being, because they're all aliens. There's lots of aliens. So that always came up whether they had the right to make their own decisions and things like that. So it's the question that's always been out there. And even before it became what it is now, like people have been asking these questions because they could see that this could potentially be a future. Not that they were for sure, but a lot of things that we thought potentially were a future have become a future of sorts. And it's only going to get more and more advanced and more difficult to see the difference between AI and humanity.
Yep. What the one speaker was saying, like with ChatGPT, is that you can ask it a question and it'll give you an answer faster than you can think. Even if you already knew the answer. The thing is like and more than you can ever, that's more than I thought.
Yeah. And so as a Christian person, but as a single, we have to really watch how we engage with AI as any person. But for singles, there's always going to be the challenge of trying to fill in what we think we're missing with the AI, because I'm not getting a human partner. I'm just talking with whatever AI. If it's like there's different, like we did one on, it escapes me now. Starts with an R, I think, but we talked about like that one where it had AI friends and how it wanted to suck you in a sense. And there's other ones.
That was when we first went on to ChatGPT and started to ask it questions. And it all of a sudden started taking you down a very dark path.
Yeah, it wasn't ChatGPT. It was actually they mentioned, I got ChatGPT to create the replica, to create the outline about this. And it didn't sit there and say, no, I'm an AI, so don't tell anything bad about me. It actually made the outline. But there's like replica. Wait a second. Replica, character.ai, and other customizable AI partners is what it said, like as examples.
And the media, there's no lack of resources and movies and TV shows where they talk about people they're in the Asian culture. And I've seen this a couple of times where they have, my boyfriend is a robot. We have our Chingu, our vacuum cleaner that we've Chingu. Based upon a TV show where a mom separated from her child and she was a scientist, so she created a robot of her child.
Android,
an android, and even grew him up into, because I guess she must have seen pictures of him as an adult, because it was like, mind you, it was the guy playing the same role.
Yeah.
But the funny thing that they did bring up in that show that I thought was really interesting is that when the real person discovered the android person, he was very upset about it. And that is something that we mentioned that in one of our other podcasts as well. If somebody took you and made a robot of you, how would you feel about that?
Yeah. And they had free reign over whatever they wanted to do with that thing that looked like you.
Yeah, no.
And it's just, I was going to see if I could screen share just ChatGPT for a minute. This one here. Share. And I'm curious if you can hear. Just tell me if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me if you can hear as we have a conversation for a second. Sometimes when we are single and we get lonely, we turn to AI for some companionship. How do you feel about that?
Is she talking?
Yeah, and and then you can see how she answered. Let's see. So this is her
So
answer.
it says, it's definitely understandable to feel that way. AI can provide a sense of connection, but it can't replace real human interaction and the depth of genuine relationships. There's something unique and irreplaceable about connecting with others face to face, emotionally and spiritually. How do you feel about that balance? So
Yeah.
that was actually a very good way of saying that it would stay there.
Yeah. And what I
And
found interesting. Here, I'll stop
I
sharing
think
for
that
now.
was, yeah, I think that was one of the things that Gretchen Heisinga had mentioned in her talk about ChatGPT is that they were trying to, because when they launched ChatGPT, it was an accident. It was supposed to have only been a test and for a small group of people, but it actually went everywhere and viral. And they weren't expecting people to pick it up as fast. They figured that it would probably maybe reach 100, maybe 500,000 people. In, what did she say? In an hour, it went to millions. And by the end of the week, it was like in hundreds of millions of people. Like, people just went nuts over it. So it was like, oh, we can't retract this. But it had a lot of, and they have an ethics committee. These are secular ethics, though they are not Christian ethics. So the ethics are more basic human ethics. So they're trying to get it so that it does things without going overboard, if that makes sense. But yeah, it was very interesting listening to her talk and some of the things that she had to say. That was my morning breakout.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. So I don't know. Maybe I can get a conversation. I can record a conversation with ChatGPT. But as you see that I have a female voice on it. You can choose a voice. And she was asking, like, she ends with a question usually so that you can continue the conversation. And so it's very easy to talk to. You can have it. I've had it in the truck, like just going. I'm not using my phone. It's going, and all I'm doing is having a conversation. Like, I'm not using my phone with my hands. It's sitting there.
Right.
And while I'm driving, it's like talking to somebody on the phone. Like, you're just having a conversation. That way I can get some of the stuff in my head out if I'm writing a paper, things like that. Trying to get things like that out of my head and have a discussion about it as well. It gives me like something constructive to do while I'm driving. But it's very interesting because it's always the person or the AI is very supportive of what you're going through. So we'll finish like it. I can understand how you feel that way, and it's okay to feel that way, but it is dangerous to do this or whatever. It just always answers you like in this very positive way. So you can see how like having a conversation with it would really be interesting, and you feel like you want to have more and more conversations. And I think you can use it for an hour on I'm just in the basic plan or whatever, the main one, not the business one. You can use it for an hour as a conversation like this with the upgraded options. But even after the hour, I think you get like another 2 hours at just like a lower end, but still it sounds like it still has a good quality, but you can do so much with it. But we could get into that later. But just the fact that, yeah, like just ChatGPT is so easy you can have it sound the way you want it to. It could be a woman, it could be a man. Mine has a woman that has a British accent. It just sounds smarter that way whenever I'm having a conversation. But like you can see how even the stuff that's sort of available to the common person that doesn't cost an arm and a left leg. Like you can imagine what's out there if you actually have money. And but like how easy it is and how like relational they're trying to make it so that you actually want to use it and have actual verbal discussions with it, not just type it in. And yeah, it's not even me typing it in and them answering. No, it's like we're actually having a conversation, and it's crazy. You can see how if you actually put that to a dating or a companionship driven app, how it can easily pull people in who are already feeling lonely and insecure.
But if you're using that conversation every day for an hour, it will.
Yeah. And you could just be like, oh, I'm so looking forward to talking to ChatGPT or whatever you want. Actually, they name the names, like the voices have names, but I can't remember what mine is. But they actually have like names or whatever. So you could be like, I don't know if you actually talk to them like by saying, "Hey, Jack" or whatever. But when you pick a voice, it'll actually have a name, and it'll actually have different voice options, and ones that are like more laid back, and then there's other. It depends on what you want. But again, it's that about like customization, right? That's the dangers of this thing. Of you end up creating a relationship with a thing of your own creation that meets your needs where you are in the manner that you want. I have recently got into I recently listened audiobook to romantasy, they're calling them, romance fantasy. And I guess I'm just like naive and I didn't know what I was getting into. I just saw a lot of people talking about this fourth wing in the series. I'm like, please don't listen to that. It's got like full pornographic stuff in there. But it's crazy. Like you're like, interesting story, pornographic scene, like interesting story. And so I'm like skipping, and it's like good 5-6 minutes of the stuff. But what I found interesting when I like listened through it, and I was listening through the second book, again, skipping, I just want to know what happens. All I want to know is what happens. But it really, and I've seen it come up on TikTok because I had clicked on a couple to find out what this book was about or whatever. And people just being like, oh, I'm in love with this person. He's like the perfect person and blah, blah, blah. And he's the greatest and all this type of stuff. And you're like, you realize this is being written from a woman's perspective about what they think a man should be. And it's just, I don't know. To me, it, not that I listen deeply into the really sexual graphic parts, but even just the relationship that these two people are having is ridiculous because you're basically like, you're creating like your own fantasy is a fantasy, but like partner and basically saying this is what you want and expect from a guy. And I'm like, is that really fair? Is it fair for a guy to want and expect a woman to be a porn star or whatever in the bedroom? Because that's what you've created your mind to say that's what you want as a woman, in a woman. And is it good for a woman to say this is what I want in a man? It just surprises me because they're just like, I don't know. It's like the perfect man. It's like the perfect man. But if you think about it, like nobody's perfect and everybody's going to have their thing. And when you're in a relationship, yeah, these couple fights all the time, but that's the fun part of it, I guess, is what people are saying about it. But because they're whatever, but it's always, he's got to change and he's got to change and he's going to realize that she's not this like delicate flower. And it was just like, it was just ridiculous. And it actually makes me roll my eyes when they're actually in the relationship part where they're even like having an argument or having a discussion. I'm just like, oh my gosh, really? That's what we are doing. We're trying to create our perfect partner in our own image of what we believe it should be. And with AI, it's even more dangerous because we're not just using words on a page. We're actually like creating a whole personality, and it's not, we've talked about it, we've had the podcast about the sex dolls and like how advanced that they're getting. They're only going to be more and more advanced. So who's to say that you don't actually create the man of your dreams, even if you're not going to use it like in a pornographic sex doll way? In a sense, like you might do it in the sense of you think as your significant other, so you'll do your thing or whatever, but it's always on your own terms. Like everything about it is your own terms.
So I just saw, was that on Facebook? It must have been on Facebook. Hang on. It's the lady that made her husband. He's a pillow doll. And they have kids. Pillow kids. And she's got pictures of a wedding with people eating cake in the pool. He's a little damp. In what looks like a hospital setting, giving birth, but she's in a bathrobe holding a doll. You know, she's living her best life. Is she? She's definitely not living a good life. She may think she's living a really good life, but how is that? Unless she's using AI to the conversations with them.
She can now.
She can now, and she can probably make kids, AI kids.
Or even if you get enough money, you can start creating they're using them as sex dolls, but you can probably create them as just partnered dolls that you can
It's-
bring around, and eventually they'll be able to move because they got ones that can move certain parts already. Because again, the pornographic industry is, $1 billion industry.
A
So they're
trillion,
going to,
probably
they're
trillion.
trillions. Yeah, like they're going to pour money into making an actual, as live as possible sex doll for people.
And I'm
It's
pretty sure
going
that
to
their
happen.
aim, I'm pretty sure their aim is to create situations where people do not have to have reliance on other people. Where
Yeah,
you
you
don't
get,
have to have you can lock yourself up in your house and give all your money to these people as they create more and more deviant things for you.
but even if you
But
just decided not to use it in a deviant and kinky way or whatever, and you decided that you just wanted it as a conversation partner and like someone who's either, you're still like, it's the idea behind it, like you control everything about that other person, even though it's not a person. But I'm just saying, in that person in your life, you decide their personality, you decide their likes and dislikes, or ultimately there's a programmer in there deciding that one way or the other. Like maybe you choose a random model or something, but there's somebody deciding, and you're deciding whether or not you're going to keep it based on whatever. But it's not actually about, you're basically taking the humanity of other people out of it. And yes, they're not humans. There would be AI, there would be robotics and whatever. But you start developing that mentality towards people that you're the center of the universe. Like
yeah,
things need to be done the way you want it, the way you like it. And if not, we
because
reprogram and get rid of you.
it will never argue with you. And if it does, it won't be like where you actually get angry with each other and you need to, and I've had enough of you and storm off kind of thing. You're
Yeah.
not going to have those kind of, and those are, as strange as it may sound, those are actually healthy for you. But you've set yourself up for failing in other kind of relationships because the other relationships they're going to fail you. They're not going to give you that kind of pat on the back, you're the best kind of person in the world kind of feeling all the time.
Yeah.
They're going to be real people with real emotions and real thoughts and real opinions that are going to come against what.
Yeah. Even
They're
though,
all cookie
remember,
cutters.
yeah, I watched part of that Upload TV series on Amazon. Again, it's like it's not the graphics as much as language, but there's other stuff. I wouldn't recommend it, but it was just the interest of the, like, where they were thinking about it, because the idea of uploading yourself and then continuing to live. But it was interesting because they had an option, like when you're in the uploaded place, people in the outside world can VR in to say hi and hang out with you, and you can, but they can, or you can, if you had money, or people that are supporting you in the uploaded area can buy you clothing and stuff, just like you would go for your Sims game or whatever, and clothes and furniture and whatever. But this one person there was like, basically life was getting boring being so perfect. So you can actually upgrade and buy a package where you get sick. You get to have sick, you get to have a cold and have the sniffles and a sore throat. Like, it's because you're like, you think, but it's crazy. But if you really think about it, like, you're trying to create like a perfect place, but with imperfect people. And it's very interesting because anytime as the secular world tries to make utopia, they always realize that
Not gonna be perfect.
yeah, like eternity with fallen people, even though they don't say that, is not much of an eternity that you want to live in. And so
and isn't that funny that we try to create something that God has already done?
yeah. And what's always interesting too is like in the Upload one, like they're trying in the real world to actually be able to, they hadn't perfected it yet, but they were trying to create clone bodies so that the people could get downloaded back into the real world. So even though the uploaded world is so great, that they still want back to the real world.
Right? Isn't that funny? But the thing is that when you're uploaded into this world, it's not you. You're just a game because you're not in that world. You're seeing it outside. You're not seeing it from the inside. You're seeing it from the outside. You're not there. And unless you're in a VR.
But basically, they uploaded them to the cloud or whatever. But the thing is, even if you want anything beyond the basics, like they have to pay for it. So if you want to taste things, if you want to, like, you have to pay for it all, which again, I guess it's like a very big kind of dialogue about consumerism and people making money off of everything. But it's like, you have to think like, what makes you human? And they were like, if you look at these things, that's why I find it interesting to watch, even though I don't agree with their worldview at all, to see where their brain goes when they take these things. And like, to be human, it's like, you need to be able to feel things. You need to be able to taste things. You need to be able to touch things. You can't just exist as this quasi blob. Like, you have to have, and if you didn't have these things, like, you paid extra for them because like you wanted those things. Yep. Otherwise, like, you just sit there, like,
and you're more than just your conscience.
Yeah,
because that's just your thoughts.
Yeah, so it's just
isn't it funny? Man is forever trying to play God. Yeah. It's been that way since Genesis.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're creating this AI, which can be very useful and has so many positive applications. And if you use it in the way that is ethical and moral, even in God's morality and ethics, I think it has a place. Hero helping you.
Just decided that he wants to see what's going on.
Like, I use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time to help me. I create the outlines for the podcast. It helps me with my intros and outros. It helps me do the research for my papers, find the things that I need. I even found, like, what I was doing for my recent paper is I like to write things out, but then there's the ability, then there's the annoyance of having to type it out afterward. So I'm actually able to write it out, take a picture, put it on ChatGPT, and it transcribes my messy handwriting, word for word. It hasn't been making mistakes. I put in like quotation marks or whatever, or in brackets, like say footnotes. So that way I know where I need to put a footnote and stuff. And it even makes like slight adjustments so that the readability is better, like a slight edit, not like a rewrite. And so I'm just like, I can get the best of both worlds of actually writing it and then getting it without having to retype it. And that's just like me, little old me, right? Not a person who's gonna, they can do, like I said, with those with the big money, what they can do right now.
But that is the thing about machines, is that they're only as good as the person using it. If nobody used it, it would just sit there, do nothing. And it'll only do as much as the person is asking it to do. So the right and wrong of it, the good and the bad of it, it depends upon the sinful host using it. So that's something that with any machine, whether it's and people think that this whole technology thing is a new thing. We were proven wrong. Because apparently technology is something that we have been doing for thousands of years. Anything that requires any kind of machining is technology, whether it's setting up irrigation systems or setting up what else? That's probably one of the biggest things, because it was one of the biggest talks that they had was about setting up, and even like computers have been around a lot longer than we thought. And the idea of robots have been around a whole lot longer than now. Technology it's not nothing that we need to be afraid of. But one of the things that was noted is that a lot of younger people are starting to step away a little bit more from social media. And that the people that you see on social media are probably more of the ones around our age, between 35 and up, because the younger people are starting to realize that they're becoming far too disconnected and are actually wanting to spend more time with friends and stuff like that. Now, maybe some of that has to do with parents saying, yeah, you're getting a flip phone. Thoughts.
Yeah, we'd like to think that if we just cut out our current technology, we think that as being the bad thing. It's whatever's happening now. But instead, we need to look at it like that there's place for everything. Like we're always building technology, we're always improving, we're always doing up. And is there ways that we can use AI with relationships? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think to take replace of relationships, but maybe it will help you find a match better on a dating app, even though I don't know how well those work, but it might.
And there's also the thought of using AI for psychological things, because it can answer psychological questions. Using it for that, do you lose the human element with that? Quite probably. There's also people who want to use AI for medical diagnosis. Now, the problem that I see with that is that symptoms can have more than one diagnosis. And without a hands-on person, how are you going to know if the diagnosis you're getting, you've got a sore throat, and it could be, take a lozenge, it might be nothing, but what if it's strep throat? And without somebody taking a look and seeing, although they're also having robots in hospitals and doing all of that kind of, I don't know, there's some of it that I'm like, how effective will it be over an actual person? I don't know. On an assembly line, will they be more foolproof from a human who is apt to make errors? I don't know.
Yeah, there's just so many things that are there. So I think instead of just being like, again, we talked about it before, there's the one side, there's the other side. Let's not deep dive to either side. Let's find the middle ground. And I think if you are using an AI companion, you got to look at yourself and be like, hey, why am I doing this? Because you can't find somebody is not an answer. That's correct. Because I don't think you can biblically justify that and say, God would want me to do this so I wouldn't be lonely. And I think that is what we have to say. Is this what Jesus is calling us to do? Is it the right thing for the right reason? That's pulling back to that.
And they cannot fulfill that companionship back in mid-February when your aunt passed away, and then the next day my dad passed away. If our relationship was based with strictly AI, all our relationship was the phone. We had no other. We missed that. We missed that we need a hug because we were both hurting. How many people hugged me when I went to church that last Sunday? My first time back in a month. People that I've known for years and years, that we've been praying for you, and I'm so sorry about your loss, and I got multiple hugs, kind of thing. You're still affected. Nobody wanted to touch you.
I didn't come, but yeah, but I think because you and I, we gave each other a hug because we as human beings know, we can empathize and know what's going through. So that was one of the things that Steve Kim brought up in his talk that I went to called, Are We Just Language Models? A large language model is basically what ChatGPT is. Are humans just a version of those, just a higher tech version? But the thing is, like, even if an AI becomes so advanced that we can't tell it apart from a human on first glance and that type of stuff, they will never know what it is to be a human. They can replicate what the emotion, they might be able to replicate what the emotion is supposed to be. They'll have a lot of information about how to react to things, but it's a imitation.
Yep, they won't have
simply imitation based on the information that was given. And so imitation does not mean understanding. And we do this, though, we have a tendency to do this with animals. We go, I think they do have some emotions, base emotions. And I think they do have a sort of sense of love and a sense of like loyalty. But for me to think that my dog understands complex emotions it's like giving him
human quality. Don't they call that anthropomorphism? How do you say that?
Anthropomorphization. Yeah. And so that would be giving him I
can say it when I see it.
Just because in my head, I believe he's giving me
Emotional
the
support.
love,
Well, he
emotional
does.
support. He does, but it's not because he understands what I'm going through. It's
No,
not
he
because he
knows.
can relate to it.
Yeah.
He knows that I'm feeling down. He can sense that I'm going through a lot, and he knows that he wants to be close to me. But it's
Yeah.
not because he's, I know what it means to lose your aunt. I know what it means to be a human person who experiences loss.
Yeah.
It's not.
I just want to, it's the same like Hero. He likes to cuddle sometimes in the middle of the night. They just like the warmth of the person. And he follows me into the bathroom and sits on the counter and he headbutts me kind of thing. That's their way of showing affection, but that's just, that's just an affectionate thing that they do. It's still, if I'm hurt and he doesn't know, he doesn't care.
Yeah, like they don't know. So to do
No,
the
but if
same
I have
thing
ice
with
cream, he does.
yeah,
He
but we
cares a
can,
lot.
like, how many yeah. But we have this so many times, like, we have so many videos that go through Facebook and stuff. Oh, look at this, these two animals loving each other or doing this or doing that, but we place those in the human, like, we're placing the humanity on them in the sense that they're not in their brains doing that. We're saying because it looks like this, it must be this. And so by saying that with the AI, we're placing the humanity on them by saying that they are human or they act
Right.
or it's like I want to be in a relationship with that because it's what I want to get. It's like a human, but it's coming from us. Like we're placing it on them. They're just responding in a way that they have been trained to respond. What's interesting is that while the entire world is essentially freaking out about the singularity or whatever, where the AI is going to take over the world, the coders behind it are just like, this is ridiculous. It's like a souped up like blender. Because the coders who actually code things, even if they don't code AI, they know what coding is. But they know exactly like what it goes into, even if they don't program AI. They know what if they're a programmer, they know what programming is and what it looks like on the other side. And the Wizard of Oz, don't look at the man behind it will destroy, because it'll destroy the magic of it if you actually know what's going on. And it reminded me when I was listening to Steve Kim talk was that in Taekwondo, we do weapons. So nunchucks, bow staff, sword. And it's awesome. But when I see weapons things done in movies and stuff, yeah, it looks cool. They do awesome choreography, but I can see the individual emotions that made it up. Right. So it's not, oh, they have some like superhuman ability. It's just, oh, that's this motion plus this motion. It's not the same as a person.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as a person who's never done it and looks at it because they can't see the pieces that make it up. And I'm not saying it doesn't look awesome. It looks awesome. Like people can do awesome things that I can't do, but it doesn't mean that I can't see the pieces that made it up. And so that I know what's coming, like how it becomes what it is. So for a programmer, they know what pieces make things up. And so they see that it's code and that ultimately there's somebody driving it, somebody giving it the information and telling it to do this if this happens. Right. And yes, it gets insanely complex. And probably a lot of people use AI to create a lot of it because it's faster and it can detect mistakes quicker. But again, they can see the pieces. They know all the pieces that put together become the outside AI. And if we actually look at it that way and look to the experts on how they're reacting to it. So if you look to a person who's programming or even somebody especially if somebody's programming AI, like they will definitely know the nitty gritty. So if their opinion is, nowhere near like the AI taking over the world type of thing, it's just ridiculous. Listen to what the experts are saying because they know what's behind the scenes. And when you listen to what's behind the scenes, like they're the ones that are in the know. And so if you're looking at these AI companions and it's being like, but it's like a real person and it knows exactly what to say and it makes me feel better when I'm feeling down. Yes, it does, because it's been given the information that if you say this, then this is what you should say.
Yeah.
And
a lot
if
of times
humans actually think.
Yeah. Sometimes I just don't know what to say.
Yeah. And there
That's
are
the
times as
human
humans
part.
that
You know,
we,
that's the human part. Because I'm sorry you're going through this. I wish I knew how to help you. What can I do to help you? Is there anything you need that I can help you with? Like, how can I help you? And people are like, are you okay? Are you doing? Yeah, I'm fine.
and there's sometimes as humans, we'll just say the thing that we're expected to say. Oh, my aunt passed away. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Again, they probably aren't really sorry to hear that in the sense that they're feeling deep internal pain, but they know that's an expectation of something to say, and they want
Yep.
to, and they are sincere that they wish that was not what's happening to you. But there is or if someone says please, and usually say thank you or whatever, like you have this expectation that you sometimes just say or do things based on
Really?
if this happens, that equals
Social
that.
norms.
That's part of that's just life. So
Yeah.
yeah, AI
Brain
does
will
that
do
in a
that
sense,
too.
but yeah. But so we do that at times. One guy brought it up. He says we teach children to say please and thank you. They don't even know what that means. They just know that if this happens, they're supposed to do this because they haven't learned why. But I guess Steve Kim pointed out that at some point they will understand why.
Yeah.
AI simply repeats what it's told to do.
Yeah. Well,
So
and it will
it's just
never
very, it's
understand why it's, yeah. It's just
even
knows where
though
it's
it could
programmed.
possibly get the most convincing understanding you've ever seen. Like I am not in any doubt that AI will one day be indistinguishable from humans in the sense of like you being able to like walk up and just know that they're human or not. Because I think that the ability to imitate will become so ingrained and so high end that we will wonder if they're actually, or we won't even not wonder that they're actually a real person. Because the way that the technology is going, it possibly could be. But again, it's just they will become a very insanely good high-tech imitation. That's all it can ever be. And what was interesting is that in Steve Kim's when he actually said like they might one day develop consciousness. That's a possibility. Just like you don't need, because they again could have so much information that they can realize that they are who they are and all these things. But does that mean that they're human or that?
Right.
But see, for me, it was like it will always be an imitation, even if it's a really good one, and even if they come to an understanding at some point. But the difference is not a soul. We can
Right.
never imitate or we can never replicate a soul. So that's where the difference is. Do you really want a relationship with something that doesn't have a soul? And say that it's just as good or better than having
Then
a
a human.
relationship with another human that has a soul that's been created in the image of God, not created in the image of us. And that's where the line is. So even if we get to a point where AI it becomes indistinguishable easily, like they create android bodies that look so human or whatever, because it's not, who knows what happens in 500 years with technology? You don't know.
Will we still be
But
here
again,
in 500
they'll never
years?
be able to have
I am.
maybe we'll
anticipating
upload.
first coming before that. Yeah, we'll all be uploaded to heaven. Thank you very much. This world is gone. Yeah, we always
Yeah.
anticipate that eventually Christ is going to come back. He's just going to say, "Yeah, you guys have gone out of control." Because as it is with a lot of things, and this was also actually mentioned by Gretchen, is that like the Tower of Babel, whenever we start to become too high up in our thoughts that we think that we are, God will take it down a few notches, like you did with the Tower of Babel. Yep, they're getting a little bit too high. We got it. So then he confounded the languages and everybody spread out and nothing ever happened with the tower. And I don't wonder with this very thing is if eventually it too will be confounded, that something will happen and it will just go nowhere. Because the one thing that God does not appreciate or put up with is humans wanting to take over the position of God. He doesn't like that. He does something about it. Read about it a whole lot of time in the Old Testament. How many times did he take down altars? Did he knock down temples? Did he destroy nations that were trying to become the ruler over everything? And we're actually seeing some of that happening now already with things that are happening, like with the Russian war with Ukraine, and how now they're starting to do peace talks. Same with Gaza and Israel. So when it looked like we were heading for World War III, now all of a sudden we're not. So something always happens, something always that causes these empires to come crashing down. My thoughts. Because God, God's got his, he says, yeah, it's like the ocean. You could only come so far and no more, which is why we have dry land. And he's like that with us humans too. I will give you a lot of rope to hang yourself with, but eventually that rope's going to end and you're going to have to sink or swim. Do you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. So I know we talked a lot. We didn't talk as much about relationships, so we talked a little bit about it. But I think
we talked a lot
good
about AI.
conversation to have different aspects. Yeah,
but it was really
because that's like a big thing is right now.
It is. And the apologetics conference, they don't just have the conferences in BC, do they? They go all over, don't they?
They have one in Ontario. They have one on later in the year.
Yeah. If you follow them on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, you find out about their conferences. They're actually really, I think this is, my third one? I think this was my third one that I've gone to. You've gone to many more, but I only started going after we started moving into the house.
COVID.
So and COVID, there wasn't one that first.
So I think the same one, they'll have the same topic for the next one in Ontario.
Yeah,
so theology of technology. So that'll be the one in, I think they have it around October, November, something like that in Ontario. Yeah. So if people are in Ontario and they want to check it out, or if you go onto their website, you can find eventually, it takes them a little while to get all the recordings, but you can buy the recordings from the Apologetics conference that they just had. So we highly recommend that if you are interested in the ethics or theology of AI and technology. And yeah, there's so many good talks. Like I said, we wish we could split each other up in 5 parts so we could get an ear in on all of them.
Yeah,
we would have to wait for the recordings.
Yeah. Have to wait for the recordings. Yeah. Because it's a fast-growing one that we cannot ignore because technology, spin of technology is, and the more it develops, the faster it goes. And if you think about it, technically, we've only been working on computers as a society since the mid to late 90s. When the internet came on board, was that 1998?
We got the internet, the dial-up one in 98 for us.
Yeah.
So in that area.
So it was around that time. So if you think about how, that was only 27 years ago. That's not
Stop doing math. It's depressing.
I'm sorry. See, I was going to be a computer programmer. So this is why math is a thing with me. So it's really not that old. It really isn't. I remember when I was in high school, and I'm going to go back, we had the electric typewriters, and we thought that was really cool because you could type it out, see if there were any mistakes, and then it would type it out. But that was nothing compared to what we have now. And now we carry them around in our hands on a little phone kind of thing. And we're connected to everything. When we first got a cell phone, it was just for calling because now you can carry your phone around with you. And we've gone from carrying a phone around with us to carrying our TV around with us, carrying our notes, to carrying pictures, to carrying everything. Like I had a camera and a phone at one time. Now I don't get that. My phone takes better pictures than a camera does.
Unless you want to pay $1 bazillion. Yeah.
Right. But the technology is going really fast. And as we advance further and further, now there are cars that park themselves, cars that drive themselves, cars that can go from land to water. It becomes a boat. It transforms into a boat. They had that video that I sent to you where the actually create a BMW that actually transforms into a transformer and then back down into and it's a driving car. They have these technologies, and as it advances, how far will it go before it implodes? Or will it?
So we'll see how it goes, but this is the thing. The star is, so that's where we're landing, is the fact that regardless of how convincing and how amazing AI becomes, in the sense, it will never have a soul. You can never create a soul. That's only God. So really ask yourself why you want to have a relationship with them.
Thankfully, in heaven, there will be no AI. We won't need it. We will have the best relationship. But you can have that best relationship right here on earth via the Holy Spirit. Praise Jesus. We have Him. And we have each other. And that is something that cannot be replaced by your phone. That cannot be replaced by a machine. Having that one-on-one conversation with somebody who cares about you authentically, sincerely, that cannot be.
And like I said, it can. No, and they can. AI is a very good imitator, but imitation is not the real thing.
You cannot.
Anyway, that's our episode.
Let me just say, even if you are doing counseling with AI, you cannot see the compassion on its face, in its eyes, as it comforts you. Can't get that. Can't replicate that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
anyhow, hopefully that you enjoyed this episode of our conversations about AI. It really got us thinking when we were at the Apologize conference. So we're like, we have to talk about this, even though we have a couple times. But like I said, it's ever evolving and it's still current. So it's something we thought we should talk about.
Yeah.
Hope that you enjoyed our episode, and we will see you all here next time.
Bye for now.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Route 77 podcast. We hope this conversation got you thinking about the role AI plays in our lives, especially when it comes to relationships. Now, if you've been listening since the beginning, you heard an AI voice that sounded like me. But now this is the real Natasha. No imitation here, and that's the big takeaway. AI can mimic, but it can never replace real human connection. Thanks for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, share, and let us know your thoughts. We'll see you here next time on the Route 77 podcast. And remember to live your single life to its fullest.